This show is supported by Odoo. When you buy business software from lots of vendors, the costs add up and it gets complicated and confusing. Odoo solves this. It's a single company that sells a suite of enterprise apps that handles everything from accounting to inventory to sales. Odoo is all connected on a single platform in a simple and affordable way. You can save money without missing out on the features you need. Check out Odoo at odoo.com. That's odoo.com.
Welcome to Unlike-Minded, a sci-fi audio anthology.
Fathoms by Jessica Gonzalez. At first, I thought it was the bends. I'd known I was coming up too quickly, but fear overruled logic in the dark. There was something unnatural down there in the deep. Scientifically, we know next to nothing about the ocean. We've only explored 5% of it. That's why we were out here in the first place, on our research vessel circling the Mariana Trench. Anything could be lurking at the bottom, 6,000 fathoms deep. And because we're scientists, because we're human, we just had to go looking. The second I saw movement in my periphery, I knew that I was in danger. Something had locked its milky eyes on me, and it wouldn't retreat back into the deep until it got what it wanted. There had been no chance of escape, I knew that, but I tried anyway. I set my sights on the surface high above me and swam for it until my limbs were screaming. Then there were knives in my ankles, my thighs, my stomach, my wrists, venomous tentacles slithering tighter and tighter, slowing my progress and then, finally, reversing it. I thrashed and clawed and kicked, blind with pain. Its touch had set fire to my nervous system. I was dying. I knew I was dying. And then it let me go. By the time I opened my eyes, it was just a dark silhouette, sinking deeper and deeper until it was gone. As soon as I made it back onto the dinghy, vertigo pinned me to the floor. My skin crawled. I'd had my fair share of brushes with the sea's most dangerous, and I had the scars to prove it. But I'd never felt anything like the panic that overtook me when that beast rose from the depths. Doc kept telling me there were no such things as sea monsters, but he hadn't seen it. He hadn't felt it. Back on the ship, Doc watched me for a full 12 hours, assured me that I wasn't showing any of the symptoms of decompression sickness, that I had just been rattled, that I needed to sleep it off. But my bed sheets felt like sandpaper on my skin, so I slept curled up on the cold metal floor beneath my bunk. The next morning, I woke drenched in a cold sweat, so I turned on the shower and peeled the damp clothes from my body. While I waited for the water to heat, I noticed the gray-green residue beneath my fingernails. It fell to the bathroom counter in tiny gelatinous chunks as I picked at it, the faint odor of fish wafting up at me. It had to be from the creature, from when I'd tried to claw it off me. The sight of it turned my stomach. It was an accident, catching my reflection in the mirror. But once I'd seen my face, I couldn't look away. My hair was stringy and crunchy with dried salt. My lips and the bags under my eyes were tinged a suffocated blue, so pronounced I took a deep breath just to make sure I still could. My skin was porcelain pale and dry, peeling in patches around my mouth and nose. It wasn't until the steam from the shower blurred my features that I was able to rip myself away from the mirror. I would feel better, look better, once I got clean. Surely. I'd barely stepped one foot into the shower when I reared back in pain, nearly losing my balance as the bath mat slipped beneath my feet. The water had burned me. I liked my showers hot, liked my skin to be pink from the heat when I got out. But this was scalding. I adjusted the temperature, but even lukewarm water was uncomfortably hot on my skin. In the end, I kept turning the lever until it was ice cold. Only then was I comfortable again. I hesitated to look back into the mirror when I was done, but I swiped away the condensation and was relieved to find I did look better. The water had brought some color back to my face. The blue tint was almost completely gone. I slapped on a thick layer of moisturizer to help with the dry skin, added a swipe of lipstick, dabbed a bit of the color onto my cheeks for good measure, put in just enough effort to stop people from asking questions I couldn't answer. Then I put my still wet hair into a bun and grabbed my lab coat. Doc was at the microscope with another researcher when I made it to the lab. He eyed me silently as I walked in, but I could hear what he wasn't saying. I didn't expect to see you here today, Callie. You have to take better care of yourself, Callie. No specimen is worth your well-being, Callie. And normally I would agree with him, but I'd scooped the strange jelly from under my fingernails off the bathroom counter, and I wanted to get a closer look at it. Carefully, I tweezed bits of it from the contact lens case I'd transported it in, placing them onto a microscope slide and dropping a cover glass on top. Then, I popped the slide onto the stage and hit the light switch. There wasn't much to see. Whatever it was made of, it didn't let the light through. Unclipping the slide, I took off the cover glass and added a single drop of iodine to the substance. This time, when I slid it back over the aperture, it came to life. I'd expected to see cell walls deteriorating, flesh going necrotic after being cut from the living thing it belonged to. I was prepared to search the decay for stingers of some kind or nematosis, microscopic filaments that could have injected me with venom the second they brushed against my skin. Anything to explain the way my legs and torso were still burning or the way I hadn't been able to fully catch my breath since I got back on the ship. What I didn't expect to see was movement, mitosis, life. Cells not only still living, but actively dividing as I stood there and watched. Stunned, I locked eyes with Doc and waved him over. I distinctly remember telling you to take the day off, he scolded me when he reached my station. I am, I told him. This is personal research. Could you just take a look? He peeked into the lens. What am I looking at? It's from whatever was down there, I said quietly. I found it under my fingernails this morning. It looks like you had a harrowing encounter with a sea cucumber. That's not funny. I'm not joking. That's the only sea creature I know that can regenerate like this. That's kind of the point. I don't think what I saw down there is known. You think you discovered a new species. All I could do was shrug. Doc crossed his arms. I tried to swallow down the hurt that bloomed in my chest. He was looking at me the way one would look at a child who was scared of the monster under the bed. Patient, but over it. You don't believe me. I believe you saw something that frightened you, but I also believe it was dark and you were running low on O2, and the brain can come up with some wild shit on a diet of adrenaline and oxygen deprivation. And these marks. He took my hand and flipped it over to get a look at the angry red welts on my forearm. They look an awful lot like jellyfish stings to me. I tore my hand from his grip. It wasn't a fucking jellyfish, I hissed. Doc was silent for a moment as he searched my face. Your lips are blue, he said. Then he took my hand again, brought it up to the light to get a better look. So are your nails. Maybe the chamber isn't a bad idea. The quiet in the hyperbaric chamber was oppressive. All I had to accompany me were the high-pitched rings of tinnitus and the sound of my own blood pumping, my pulse a ticking clock. Only, I wasn't sure what it was counting down to. I don't know if it was that quiet or my own nerves, but something about it made my skin crawl. It felt as if I had the sea lice in my bloodstream just beneath my skin trying to crawl out of my pores. I resisted the urge to rake my nails up and down my arms for as long as I could, but finally I couldn't bear it any longer. Except scratching didn't help. No matter how hard I clawed or how deep my fingernails dug into my flesh, every inch of me itched. A sharp stink in the crook of my elbow let me know I'd drawn blood, but I quickly forgot the pain, because at the same time, something small and glinting had gone flying, flicked from my skin in a shallow arc, and landed in my hair. I picked it out of a tangle and held it up to the light. That ticking clock of my heart nearly stopped. It was a scale. A fish scale, shining iridescent in my palm. I glanced back at my arm, where a single drop of deep red blood was beating. Proof that it had come from my skin. I flung it from my hand. Then I sat up and searched the rest of my body. The tinnitus was back. My mind was screaming at me, sounding the alarm. Something was very wrong, but I could barely hear my own thoughts for the ringing in my ears. "Let me out," I said, suddenly unable to breathe even in a chamber full of oxygen. I pounded a fist on the glass, startling the tech Annabelle across the room. "Let me out!" You have half an hour left," she told me, her voice muffled and uncertain through the glass. She was still a student, only on the ship for the summer. I shook my head, which sent the world spinning. "I don't care. I want out now." "But, Doc, I said I don't care." I barely recognized my own voice. I also didn't recognize the voice in my head, hissing, "Doc can choke. I'll do it myself, until he's blue too, until he stops breathing." I pushed that voice out of my head, heart pounding. "Open the goddamn door, Annabelle." "Okay, I have to depressurize the chamber first," Annabelle stammered as she fumbled with the controls. "It'll take a few minutes." I let myself collapse back onto the bed, barely holding in tears. My skin didn't itch anymore. The sensation had transformed into a dull, stinging pain, like a dry, cracked knuckle in winter, only all over my body. I was vaguely aware that I was sweating. The damp sheets were sticking to my skin, tugging painfully every time I moved. My fingers clawed at my throat, at my chest, as if I could open them up from the outside and get more air in that way. "How much longer?" I rasped. 3 more minutes, Annabelle answered. She just stood there, wide-eyed and helpless, watching me as I died, because I was sure I was dying. "Can you turn the lights off?" I whimpered. It should have been embarrassing the way I sounded like a child having a temper tantrum, but my body was turning on me, and I didn't have the capacity to care about anything else. I threw a hand over my face to try and block out the overhead light, which had become blinding and hot and overwhelming in a matter of seconds. But as I saw my own fingers slip over my eyes, a new flush of adrenaline sent my skin prickling. I took my hand away from my face, just a few inches, just enough to see clearly. Then I splayed my fingers and sure enough, translucent membranes stretched between them, so thin that the light could shine through to reveal a web of pulsing purple capillaries within each one. "Open the door," I choked out. "Open it now. There's still 30 seconds. Annabelle, open the fucking door right now." As soon as the words were out, something in Annabelle's face changed. She had gone pale, and I could sense that her breathing had grown shallow. For a few long seconds, neither of us moved. Then the click of the door unlocking automatically as the chamber finally depressurized. Her eyes flicked to the latch, then back to me, and I realized that whatever had changed the look on her face had also changed her mind about letting me out. She was afraid of me. She should be. That voice in my head returned, whispering poison. After Doc, she's next. Annabelle and I lunged for the door at the same time, but I crashed through it easily, sending her skidding across the floor. "Wait!" she screamed. Briefly, I thought of turning back, of asking her if she was all right. But my mind had lost control of my body, and I fled the room without so much as glancing over my shoulder. My mind was at war with itself. Part of me was screaming to find Doc, to get my hands around his throat, to sink my teeth into his flesh. But the other part of me only knew I was in agony, only wanted to get out of the light driving knives into my skull. So I searched out the darkness, my feet stumbling over themselves as they went. When I made it back to my room, I went straight for the shower. It was the last place I felt like I could breathe, standing there under the steady stream of water. I threw the lever toward cold and stepped in fully clothed. I sank to the floor and let the water soak through my hair and my jeans. I would have let it soak my bones if I could. We didn't have bathtubs on the ship, so it would have to do. anything to soothe the fever that had overtaken me. Suddenly, the taste of metal coated the back of my throat, and I flicked my tongue over teeth that felt as if they'd been filed down to sharp points. Shaking, I stood and glanced in the mirror, pulling my lips back. I had to stifle a gasp. My gums were raw and bleeding, my newly sharpened teeth blackened and receding into them. But the worst of it was my eyes. The pupils were milky, as if I'd suddenly developed cataracts. I crashed back to the floor in the shower, resolving never to look in the mirror again. I'd seen enough. I didn't want to know what other parts of me would be stripped away and replaced with something monstrous. I didn't want to know what was becoming of me. I peeled off my jeans and then my shirt. All that covered me was a bralette and a pair of underwear, the kind with the tiny little bow on the front. Vaguely, I noticed more scales sprouting from my skin at the crooks of my elbows, my collarbone, my ankles. But I was having trouble maintaining the proper level of panic. The longer I stayed under the water, the longer I let it soak into my skin, the easier it was to breathe. The more the pain eased, the less I cared about anything else. Callie? Doc's voice above me was low, scared. Every muscle in my body tensed again, the voice in my head rearing up. Now is your chance to strike, to draw blood, to eat. I shook my head, trying to silence it. I opened my mouth to ask him for help, but what came out instead was a sound that was a cross between whale song and a wolf's growl. It was inhuman. I knew it, and based on the look on his face, Doc knew it too. Stay here, he said. I'm going to call some help. No, I stopped him, my mind battling my body to get actual coherent words out. Take me back. What? Take me back. For a moment, he was silent. I could sense the second he realized what I meant. Not back to the mainland, not back to the lab or back home. I wanted to go back to the dark, back to where this started. Okay, Doc said finally. My feet left slimy footprints behind as we stepped out onto the deck. The sun seared my skin, the scales there going dry and itchy. I tasted bile on the back of my tongue with every rock of this ship. Doc headed straight for one of the dinghies, but the moment I laid eyes on the sea, I knew I wasn't going to make it to one. I just had to get in the water. I lunged for the rail, but Doc caught me in his arms, holding me back. Callie, wait! I thrashed and let out a shriek. Distantly, I was aware that everyone on the deck covered their ears at the sound. My chest heaved with the effort of fighting Doc, but his grip only got tighter. You were right, he said, keeping his voice low, like I was a stray cat he didn't want to spook. You discovered something new. My whole body was burning. I was sure that any moment I would burst into flames. I tried to pull away from him again, even got one leg over the rail, but then his voice was in my ear again. Calm down, Callie. Think how much we could learn from this. We came all this way and now we've almost got what we came for. I froze where I stood. My eyes locked on his. What? I rasped. He swallowed hard, and my eyes were drawn to the place at his throat where his pulse beat beneath the soft flesh there. What we came for? No, he stammers. I just meant. You wanted this to happen, I hiss, my voice becoming less my own with every word. You sent me down there on purpose. Callie, but I wasn't listening anymore. I pushed away all thoughts of the sea and instead, I let the voice come back. Wrap your hands around his throat. Squeeze the life out of him. If you can't breathe, then neither should he. This time, I listen. I lunge at Doc, my scaly fingers closing around his neck. He doesn't even get the chance to scream before he is grasping for breath. The others on the deck come to his aid in seconds and pull me off him, but I dig my nails into his flesh as I go, the same way I did with the creature in the deep. Then I let out another shriek, and in the moment when everyone around me claps their hands over their ears, I make my escape. If I couldn't have the water, then at least I wanted darkness. I made my way to the boiler room, deep in the belly of the ship. A massive, cavernous space home not only to the boilers, but also to the twisting maze of pipes that carried steam and hot water to the rest of the ship. A sign posted to the wall read, 5 fathoms below waterline. Not deep enough, I thought to myself. I pictured the trench stretching down into the ocean beneath the ship. 6,000 fathoms of unknowable darkness. Maybe that would be deep enough. The room around me was still and mercifully quiet. The ringing in my ears was still there, but had softened considerably. The boilers were off, so it was blissfully cool after the scorching sun. Distantly, I heard my own footsteps slap against the metal walkways, echoing back to me in the vast, hollow space until I found a nook to squeeze myself into. Only when I was safely tucked away did I examine my hands. There was blood under my nails. Doc's blood. Good, I thought to myself. He came looking for a monster, and now he'll get one. That's the moment I realized that all this time, that voice in my head had been my own. I don't know how long I spent curled up in the dark. It could have been minutes or hours or days. Without the sun making its arc across the sky, it was difficult to tell. They almost found me once. 3 men searched the boiler room. The heat coming off them as they approached my hiding spot alerted me to their presence. I peered out as they passed me, and that's when I saw it. The gray-green residue beneath their fingernails. I smiled to myself. Something deep inside me satisfied at the sight. It was time, finally, to make my way back to the sea. When I stepped onto the main deck again, everything burned. Everything hurt. I sprinted for the rail and the glittering blue that lay just beyond it. As I went, I saw Doc struggling against some of the other researchers, his lips blue, his eyes milky, and something that looked suspiciously like scales glinting beneath the collar of his shirt. I threw myself over the side, knowing Doc wouldn't be far behind. None of them would. The fire in my nerves sizzled to embers as I sank. The sunlight drew further and further away. Soon I was back in the dark, and the pain finally, mercifully, ceased. The creature got what it wanted after all, in the end, because this time, when it wrapped its electric tentacles around me, my lips stretched over needle teeth as I smiled, and I let it take me deeper. That vile, searing sun draws closer as I rise from the deep. I want nothing more than to sink back down into the comfort of the dark, but hunger twists in my belly. To sate it, I have to venture into the light. It was easier in the beginning, when I first settled into the depths. The man I'd worked with, I no longer remember his name, he'd come first. Then there were others too, sent to rescue me. Then later, they came not to rescue me, but to recover my body. They'd been easy prey. They'd come right to me. I'd latched onto their limbs just for a few seconds, and then I released them. And after a day or two, they all came back. Now, the electricity snapping at the tips of my tentacles tells me there's prey in the water. And sure enough, as the surface draws nearer, I see the blurry shape of a diver. Curiosity draws him slowly through the water, and my tongue flicks over my lips. He spots me before I've made my move, but no matter. I shoot through the water as if I was born in it, because I was born in it. My limbs stretch out in front of me. I remember when they ended in hands, 5 fingers on each one, fingernails painted pink. That seems like centuries ago. I wrap the diver in my electric grasp and feel his flesh seize beneath my grip. I know what he is feeling. Death, fear, fire. His blood boils with it, and he fights me with every ounce of strength in him. His mind knows he's already dead, but his most primal instincts order his muscles to flee anyway. I release my hold on him and he swims quickly, too quickly, toward the surface. I don't give chase. I don't need to. At first, he will think it's the bends. But nothing will break the fever. Nothing will stop his skin crawling. Nothing will save him from tasting blood and gasping for breath. And when he can bear it no longer, my diver will be back.
This has been Unlike Minded, a sci-fi audio anthology. Collection 4, Among Us. Stories about aliens, skinwalkers, and other invaders. 6,000 Fathoms was written by Jessica Gonzalez and narrated by Shelley O'Rourke. Unlike Minded is an August year-round production, created, produced, and edited by Robbie Hyne. Our intro and outro music is by Noah James, and our key art is by Brendan Haley. We'd like to give a special thank you to everyone who has supported this independent podcast production. You can keep up to date and find more info about this podcast and others on Instagram at the handle AugustYearRoundProd, by visiting our website, augustyearround.com, or by emailing us at augustyearround@gmail.com. And be sure to subscribe, leave a rating and review, and tune in next week for another episode of Unlike Minded, a sci-fi audio anthology.
The Fable and Folly Network, where fiction producers flourish.